Call now.
Okay, less than 20 minutes after Stephen Harper cut off reporter questions on the new cabinet, his office sheepishly announced the latest Senate patronage appointments. Joining me to discuss the unelected Senate as the payoff for failing an election test, we have Mike Storshaw, who gets the unenviable task of defending the indefensible.
Yes.
Hello, Mike.
Hello.
In Toronto, Amanda Alvaro is here for the Liberals, who, frankly, Amanda, didn't behave too much differently in the past. And we're joined for the first time by Robin McLaughlin for the NDP, whose party wants to abolish patronage heaven anyway. Mike, you got to admit this is pretty hard to sell, right?
Yeah, I will admit that, and I think there's a challenge anytime a prime minister is going to appoint members of the Senate, especially when he's appointing members of his own party. I think anytime that happens, you're going to come in for some criticism. It's a difficult thing to do. That said, the people that have been appointed, I don't think there's ever been any suggestion that they're not qualified to sit in the Senate by virtue of the fact that they lost an election. There's lots of people in the Senate that have never faced the electorate.
Okay.
Personally, not speaking for the party, I believe all senators should be elected. I'm a strong believer in Senate reform. I think the Prime Minister is too, and I look forward to what's going to hopefully come forward in the next 4 years to get that process moving a bit quickly.
Amanda, take a baseball bat, let it swing. What do you want to say about this issue?
Well, Mr. Harper and the Conservative government put out their press release today, and in the body of the press release it states, we would like to have a more democratic Senate. And instead, what do we get? We get the unelectable Senate. The people who were recently defeated in the last election, the voters spoke, they put the hammer down on that decision, and then Mr. Harper and the Conservatives turn around and elect them to the Senate to represent us in public service and leadership. It is colossal contempt for the electorate, and it's an absolute embarrassment on the back of an election that was just held a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, well, Robin, how do you match that vitriol?
Well, first I'll commend Mike for coming on the show to defend this, something the Prime Minister was not prepared to do. His office issued the press release after he had finished his questions with the media. And I'd say the minister with the toughest job and the toughest appointment today would be Tim Upal, the new Minister for Democratic Reform. So I imagine he's looking at his duties and the challenges ahead of him with some cynicism today with the appointment of 3 defeated Tory candidates. Canadians rejected these 3 people, so to see them appointed to the Senate is very hypocritical.
See, I thought, Mike, to be honest, the Prime Minister got the majority. He could then afford to be principled for a change. Like, I understand with a minority, you never know if you're going to have an election. You got to play the political games. But now you got 4 years. So why are you suddenly bending your principles in a pretzel and doing this literally on your first day with a new cabinet?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think this is not an easy sell for any party or any Prime Minister. I do think, though, that we have to remember that the Conservative Party of Canada has now won 3 straight elections, and the Prime Minister has won in our system as it exists in an imperfect fashion to appoint senators to the Senate and have the Senate reflect the Conservative Party. I think we need to kickstart that process of reform more quickly. I would like to see it move more quickly. As you point out, he does have 4 years to do that in a less constrained fashion than you would have within a minority parliament. And I do believe that the Prime Minister wants to move forward on that more quickly. Frankly, the door's been open to have senators elected in this country for the better part of 5 years.
Well, we got one of them.
And a few provinces are taking him up on it. So reforming the Senate is not as easy a task as you might like. It's certainly not easy to abolish it as the NDP would like either.
Okay, Amanda, this is way too easy for you, so I'm going to switch topics and get to the cabinet now, and I'm going to put you on the spot and want you to give me one name that you think is a positive, not a negative, a positive appointment by the Harper government to a cabinet gig.
Well,
You're next, Robin.
I think Clement is a positive appointment. Certainly going to give us a lot of fodder over the next little while. Here is a minister that's going to be in charge of $4 billion spending reduction, trying to find those savings at a time that's going to be very difficult to do so. And this was also a minister who had considerable waste in his spending during the last parliamentary session. So from my point of view, and yes, I've turned your question around a little bit, but it certainly will be positive fodder for the opposition parties to watch how Mr. Clement is going to take on this extraordinary task.
Oh, you're so sneaky, Amanda. That was a way of turning it around. All right, Robin.
Look, I'm happy to talk positively about this, but first I've got to respond to Minister Clement as the Minister of Austerity. I mean, here this is the man that oversaw the $1 billion.
I think she was being sarcastic.
I did catch that, but I'm going to take this opportunity.
Okay.
But yes, how do we trust the government that it's going to proceed with austerity? We've got a minister here who's responsible for a $1 billion boondoggle in Toronto, and he's now responsible for bringing the books back to balancing the books at a time frame that's still unclear at this time. But positively, first I'll say I'm pleased to see the government acknowledge that it has not been up to par on the world stage, and moving Minister Baird to Foreign Affairs, I think, is signaling that things like the failed attempt for the Security Council seat at the UN, the government's recognizing that and is putting someone that's been a capable performer for the government.
Is there? I'm going to twist it. Who's a negative in this appointment?
Look, I think anytime you're bringing people into the cabinet...
You're dodging, come on.
No, anytime you're bringing people into the cabinet who are newly elected, who don't even have experience as an MP, there's a risk involved. I think the Prime Minister has taken on that risk in a way that mitigates it a little bit, in so much as he's put some experienced people in the cabinet who are newly elected MPs. We saw Minister Oliver on the program just a little while ago, clearly an experienced person, someone with a lot of accomplishment in his professional life.
Sounds promising, too.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's always going to be risk when you do that sort of thing, but I'm optimistic about the makeup of the cabinet.
Amanda, I want to go quickly to you on this. We're almost out of time, but did you see anything in these appointments that suggests this is anything but a status quo cabinet, or do you see any signs of a more aggressive agenda ahead?
No, I think it was pretty clear that there weren't any major changes. Certainly, Mr. Baird will be an interesting one to follow. He has been anything but diplomatic, so to watch him, put diplomacy and really affect change on the world stage will be interesting to watch. But there wasn't really. It's an overbloated cabinet. It's a cabinet of 39 ministers, but not a lot of change, not a lot of surprises in this one.
Robin?
Well, we heard this was going to be small. The word small kept getting bounced around. There's nothing small about this cabinet.
Size doesn't matter, Robin.
Well, the only thing small in this cabinet is the representation of women, and I find that disappointing. I mean, I'd
10 out of the 39, right?
Yeah, and I juxtapose that to the great representation that the NDP shadow cabinet will have from women. We have a record number of women and 40 members of parliament in our caucus, and I look forward to the NDP bringing forward issues of importance to women.
Since you came forward to defend the indefensible, you get the last word.
Sure. Just on the point of Minister Baird, I think one thing people overlook is John Baird's ability to reach across the aisle, to be diplomatic. I know that he puts on that pit bull attack dog face. Those of us that know him, those of us that interact with him in Ottawa, even across the aisle in the House of Commons, know that he's very capable of being, I think, a fine foreign affairs minister. He's going to do Canada quite proud, I think.
Okay, Mike, Robin, and Amanda, thank you all for joining us. We'll hope to see you next week.
Thanks, Don.
Coming up after the break, the winners, the losers, and the rookies to watch in the new cabinet. We talk to our journalists about them all. Coming up next. Please stay with us.
You're watching CTV News Channel, a division of Bell Media. To enjoy